The council chamber was enormous, stretching nearly a kilometer in diameter with rows of seats rising in spirals toward the domed ceiling. Representatives from 317 species filled those seats, creating a symphony of colors, shapes, and sounds that would overwhelm any human seeing it for the first time. But Daehai and Kim had been here many times before. He was no longer impressed. He sat in the human section with his team, watching as the Velcrin counselor gestured with his crystalline appendages. The creature's voice echoed through the translation devices embedded in every seat, turning his alien speech into dozens of languages simultaneously. Daehai understood the words perfectly, but he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "The request from Earth is denied," the Velcrin said, his tone dripping with contempt. Again. This was the 15th time. 15 times in 2 years that humanity had asked for fair treatment in trade routes. 15 times they had been rejected. Daehai's jaw tightened, but he remained seated. His assistant, a young woman named Hejin, touched his arm gently, a silent reminder to stay calm. The Torvan delegate spoke next, his massive bulk shifting in his reinforced seat. "Furthermore, we propose that Earth pays an additional civilization tax for the privilege of council membership. Their contributions have been minimal, and they consume resources meant for more advanced species." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not polite chuckles, but open mockery. Daehai heard the chittering of the insectoid Dratha, the booming guffaws of the Gorlon, the hype-shit trills of the Pixian. They thought this was funny. They actually thought this was amusing. Daehai thought about the last 5 years. He remembered the human scientists whose revolutionary energy research had been stolen by a Velcrin corporation. The patent office had ruled in favor of the Velcrin, claiming humans couldn't prove prior invention. He remembered the colony on Kepler 44b that had sent 17 distress calls during a pirate raid. The council fleet had been only 3 hours away, but they never came. 43 colonists died. He remembered the merchant captain named Sung Ho, who had been charged 8,000 credits to dock at a council station. The Dratha ship that docked next to him paid only 400. Every memory was a weight on his chest. Every insult, every theft, every death had been carefully documented. Earth had tried diplomacy. They had tried patience. They had tried following every rule, filing every form, respecting every protocol. And where had it gotten them? Ambassador Kim, the council chair, said, noticing his raised hand. "Does Earth wish to speak?" Daehai stood slowly. The laughter died down, replaced by curious silence. Humans were usually so quiet in these meetings, so eager to please. What could the little primate possibly want to say? "I have a statement," Daehai said, his voice steady. He had practiced these words 1,000 times in his head during sleepless nights. Earth has been a member of the Galactic Council for 23 years. In that time, we have contributed technology, resources, and personnel. We have asked only for the same respect and fairness granted to other members. Yes, the Velcrin counselor interrupted, and you have been treated fairly. Your species is simply too primitive to understand council protocols. Something inside Daehai broke, not in anger, but in clarity. He saw the situation for what it truly was. These beings would never respect humanity. Not in 23 years, not in 200. They saw humans as useful slaves, nothing more. "No," Daehai said quietly. "We understand perfectly." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed document. The security system scanned it immediately, confirming it was harmless. Just paper and ink, ancient human materials. He held it up for the chamber to see. Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council. We revoke our membership, our agreements, and our obligations. We will no longer participate in this organization. The silence that followed was absolute. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the laughter started again, louder than before. "Cannot simply leave," the Torvan delegate said between chuckles. "Where will you go? What will you do? Earth needs the council. You are nothing without us." "We will manage," Daehai replied. He turned to Hyjin and the rest of his team. "Gather your things. We're going home." They left the chamber in silence, ignoring the jeers and mocking calls that followed them. Behind them, The council continued with their agenda, dismissing the human announcement as a tantrum. They would regret that mistake. On Earth, President Ji-Woo Park stood before the United Earth Government Assembly. The massive hall in Geneva was packed with representatives from every nation, every territory, every human settlement across 3 star systems. The news from the council had arrived hours ago, and Ji-Woo had called an emergency session. "They laughed at us," she said, her words broadcast to billions of humans across known space. "They have stolen from us, ignored our pleas for help, and treated us as inferior beings. For 23 years, we have tried to be good members of their club, but they don't want members. They want servants." She placed her hand on the document before her, the Articles of Separation. It had been prepared months ago, waiting for the right moment. That moment had come. "I hereby sign Earth's withdrawal from the Galactic Council. We stand alone now, but we stand with dignity." Her signature flowed across the paper in bold strokes. The assembly erupted in applause, but Ji-Woo felt no joy. This was not a celebration. It was a divorce, and like all divorces, it meant both freedom and uncertainty. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Tae-young Choi watched the ceremony on his command screen. His fleet of 73 warships floated in formation, Earth's entire military might. It seemed so small compared to the Council's thousands of vessels. But Tae-young knew something the Council didn't. He knew about the secret project that had been running for 5 years in the hidden shipyards. Of Luna, he knew about the full drive technology that humanity had developed independently. Technology that didn't need Council jump gates. He knew that Earth had been preparing for this moment. "Admiral," his communication officer said, "we're receiving recall orders. All human personnel are being pulled from Council facilities." "Execute the recall," Tae-young ordered. "Bring our people home." Across the galaxy, humans began moving. Scientists packed their research and erased their files. Merchants closed their shops and settled their debts. Diplomats burned their documents and booked passage on human ships. Within 48 hours, every human in Council space was gone. The Council didn't notice at first. They were too busy laughing about Earth's foolish pride. They would learn soon enough. Humanity wasn't making an empty threat. They were cutting the ties completely, burning the bridges, and walking away forever. The universe would never be the same. 3 weeks had passed since Earth's withdrawal, and the Council was beginning to realize this wasn't a bluff. Ambassador Dae-haeon had returned to Earth and refused all communication from Council representatives. Human colonies had closed their ports to Council-line ships. Human scientists had stopped sharing their research. The silence from humanity was absolute and unnerving. In the Council's financial district on Station Helios Prime, Dratha accountant named Clicks discovered the first problem. He was reviewing quarterly reports when he noticed something strange. The human accounts were empty. Not just closed, but completely liquidated. Every credit, every bond, every investment had been withdrawn. "This cannot be correct," Clicks muttered, his mandibles clicking nervously. He ran the calculation again. The result was the same. Humanity had removed 8 trillion credits from Council financial institutions. That was 3% of the entire Council economy. 3% didn't sound like much, but in a system as complex and interconnected as the galactic economy, it was enough to cause tremors. Within days, those tremors became quakes. Banks that had relied on human deposits found themselves short of funds. Investment firms that had used human capital for leveraging suddenly faced margin calls. The stock exchange dropped 7% in a single day of trading. The Council's response was predictable. They issued sanctions against Earth. Human assets that hadn't been withdrawn fast enough were frozen. Human ships were banned from using Council jump gates. Trade with Earth was officially prohibited for all Council members. The Council chair, an ancient Lumine named Brightpath, announced that if Earth did not return to the Council within 30 days, military action would be considered. On Earth, President Ji-Woo Park read the sanctions list and smiled. "They still don't understand," she said to her chief of staff. "They think we need them." Admiral Tae-young Choi proved her right. Within 48 hours of the jumpgate ban, human ships began appearing in systems across the independent regions of space. places the Council didn't control. They weren't using the gates. They were using something else. The full drive technology had been humanity's secret project for 5 years. While Council scientists had focused on improving existing jump gate networks, human engineers had gone in a completely different direction. They had created a drive system that could fold space itself, allowing ships to travel vast distances without using any infrastructure at all. It was slower than jump gates for short trips, but for long-distance travel, it was actually faster. And it was completely independent. Human merchant ships began establishing new trade routes with independent worlds. Colonies that had been ignored by the Council because they were too far from jump gate networks suddenly had access to human goods and technology. Within a month, Earth had signed trade agreements with 47 independent systems. Dr. Hannah Lee sat in her laboratory on Mars, looking at the data from her latest experiment. She had just solved a problem that had puzzled quantum physicists for 2 centuries. The implications were enormous, potentially allowing for faster-than-light communication without relay stations. Under the old system, she would have submitted her findings to the Council's scientific database, where it would be reviewed, probably stolen, and eventually published under someone else's name. Instead, she published it openly on the Human Scientific Network and made it freely available to any species that wanted it. Within hours, scientists from a dozen independent worlds had downloaded her paper. Within days, they were collaborating, building on her work, sharing their own discoveries. The Council's scientific institutions demanded access, but Hannah refused. "The research is free," she said in her response, "but only to those who respect the researchers." On the colony world of New Sol, Commander Jae-hoon Kwan watched as the last Council ship departed from orbit. The Velcrin trading vessel had tried to dock 3 times, each time being turned away by station control. Finally, they had given up and left. The station manager, a woman named Biora, came to stand beside him. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked. "That ship carried medical supplies we need." "They carried medical supplies they were going to charge us triple the fair price for," Jae-hoon corrected. "And they would have demanded docking privileges and inspection rights and a dozen other things. We're done with that system. But what if we need help? What if there's an emergency?" Jae-hoon gestured to the display showing ship traffic around the colony. "Look, 3 human merchant ships, 2 from independent systems, and 1 from the Dorani. We have more traffic now than we did under the Council. And these traders actually negotiate fairly." He was right. The Dorani had been one of the first species to break ranks with the Council. They were a peaceful trading civilization that had watched Earth's departure with great interest. When they saw humans establishing independent trade routes and offering fair prices, they had quietly started doing the same. The Council had threatened them with sanctions, but the Dorani were too economically important to punish severely. Other species had noticed. If the Dorani could bend the rules, maybe they could too. The cracks in the Council's unity were beginning to show. Small species that had always been overshadowed by the major powers started questioning their membership. Why were they paying dues to an organization that didn't represent their interests? Why were they following trade rules that only benefited the Velcrin and Torvin? Earth had shown them that leaving was possible. The Rithani, a reclusive species that had left the Council 300 years ago, made contact with Earth for the first time in a century. Their ambassador, speaking through a translation device, met with Foreign Minister Borasong in a secure facility in Seoul. "We watched your departure with interest," the Rithani said. "We left the Council for similar reasons long ago. They have not changed." "Why did you leave?" Bora asked. "Because the Council is not what it claims to be. It presents itself as a democratic union, but it is truly an empire controlled by a few powerful species. They allow others to join only to exploit their resources and labor. We tried to reform the system from within. It was impossible." "What happened after you left?" "We were isolated for a time. The Council spread lies about us, claimed we were dangerous. But eventually, the truth came out. We built our own network of allies, species that valued real cooperation. We have been prosperous." The Rithani paused. "We believe humanity can do the same. We would like to help." On Station Helios Prime, the Council was in emergency session. The economic reports were devastating. Trade had contracted by 15%. Production in key industries was down. The smaller species were openly questioning council policies. Worst of all, the humans had not come crawling back. Councillor Thaxel stood before the assembly, his crystalline body reflecting the harsh lights. This is unacceptable. Earth must be punished. We should send the fleet and force them back into compliance. Force them how? Another councillor asked. Invade Earth. Start a war? If necessary, yes. We cannot allow this precedent. If Earth can leave without consequences, others will follow. War Marshal Drexfer, the commander of the Velkrin military fleet, was already preparing. He assembled the Council's largest battle group, 200 warships representing the combined might of the major powers. They positioned themselves at the edge of human territory. A clear threat. Admiral Tae Young Choi watched them arrive on his tactical display. He counted the ships, analyzed their formations, and calculated their capabilities. His own fleet of 73 vessels was vastly outnumbered. But numbers weren't everything. He opened a communication channel to Earth. They're here, he reported to President Jiwoo Park. The Council fleet is at our border. Are they preparing to attack? Jiwoo asked. No, not yet. This is intimidation. They want us to back down. And will we? Tae-young smiled. Not a chance. The standoff had begun. The pathogen appeared on Zarathus's prime without warning. One day the planet was normal, bustling with its population of 4 billion Zerothi. The next day, hospitals were overwhelmed with patients showing symptoms of respiratory failure and neural degradation. The disease spread like wildfire through the dense urban centers. Killing thousands within the first week, the Zerothi government immediately contacted the Council's medical response team. They analyzed the pathogen and discovered something troubling. It was similar to a disease that had ravaged the outer colonies 40 years ago. The cure existed, but it had been developed by human scientists. The formula was in the Council's medical database, but the key manufacturing process was proprietary human technology that had never been fully shared. The Council's medical director, a Pixian named Trilix, sent a formal request to Earth for assistance. The response came from Foreign Minister Borisong 3 days later. It was brief and professional. Earth is no longer a member of the Galactic Council. If Zarathus Prime wishes to negotiate for medical assistance, they may contact us directly as an independent government. We do not respond to requests channeled through the Council. Councillor Thaxel was furious when he heard about the response. This is barbaric. They would let billions die because of politics. They're asking to be treated as equals, Brightpath observed quietly. Something we have consistently refused to do. We cannot negotiate with them as equals. That would legitimize their departure. Then people will die, Brightpath said. Is your pride worth more than Zarathi lives? The Council debated for 6 days, while the death toll on Zarathus Prime climbed past 50,000. The planetary governor, a desperate Zarathi named Colvin, finally took matters into his own hands. He bypassed the Council completely and sent a direct message to Earth. President Gubo Park received him personally via holographic communication. She listened to his plea with a grave expression. How many dead? She asked. 53,000 and climbing, Colvin said, his voice breaking. We're losing 1,000 people every day. The Council says we cannot negotiate with you directly, but I am begging you. Please help us. Gi Woo looked at her advisors. Admiral Tae Young Choi nodded. Dr. Hannah Lee was already accessing the medical formulas. We will help, Gi Woo said, and we will not charge you. Send us the coordinates for delivery. Within 12 hours, human medical ships arrived at Zarathus Prime, carrying enough cure for the entire planet. They trained local doctors on the manufacturing process and left detailed instructions. The plague was contained within 3 days. 0 charges were issued. Earth asked for nothing in return. The Council was humiliated. News of the incident spread across the galaxy faster than any disease. Humanity had saved an entire world, while the Council had argued over protocols. Public opinion began to shift. On worlds across Council space, Ordinary citizens started asking uncomfortable questions. Why had their government let people die? Why couldn't they negotiate with Earth? What were they so afraid of? 6 species announced their withdrawal from the Council within the month. The Luminae, one of the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy, released a statement that shook the foundations of galactic politics. Bright Path, speaking for their entire civilization, detailed 3 centuries of corruption, favoritism, and abuse within the Council structure. We have watched the Council decay from an institution of cooperation into a tool of oppression, the statement read. The human departure is not a crisis. It is a wake-up call. We are leaving as well, and we urge others to examine their own relationship with this failing organization. The economic situation grew worse. With Earth gone and other species withdrawing, the Council's budget couldn't support its massive bureaucracy. They announced layoffs and cuts to essential services. Jumpgate maintenance was reduced, causing delays and breakdowns. Security patrols in Council space became less frequent, leading to increased pirate activity on the trading station Merchant's Haven, an independent facility on the border between Council and free space. A Durrani merchant named Pix met with Captain Sung-Min Han of the Earth's merchant vessel Prosperity. They sat in a small cafe, drinking synthesized beverages while discussing business. The Council banned trade with Earth, Pix said carefully. But they also said the ban only applies to Council members conducting trade in Council space. If I were to meet you here in neutral territory, technically, that would not violate the ban. That's a very interesting interpretation of the rules. I am a merchant. I interpret rules creatively. What can Earth offer that the Council cannot? Fair prices, Sung-Min said immediately. No corruption fees, no special docking charges, no inspections designed to find violations. You trade with us. You get exactly what we agreed to. No more, no less. And your technology? The fold drives. Not for sale. But we're willing to trade for other technology on fair terms. Real exchange, not the Council's system where they take everything and give nothing. Within weeks, dozens of independent merchants were making similar deals. They met human traders in neutral space and conducted business that benefited both sides. The Council couldn't stop it without declaring war on the independent regions, which would be economic suicide. War Marshal Drexfer was losing patience. His fleet had been sitting at the human border for 2 months, achieving nothing. The humans had not backed down. They had not even blinked. His ships were consuming resources. His crews were getting restless, and the whole galaxy was watching. He proposed a blockade. If they couldn't intimidate Earth through presence alone, they would strangle their economy. The Council approved the plan, and Drexfer positioned his 200 warships along every major route into human space. No ship would be allowed in or out without Council inspection. Admiral Ma Tail-Choi watched the blockade form with grim amusement. The Council still didn't understand. They thought human trade depended on those routes. They thought fold drives were limited. They were wrong. He sent a message to every human colony and every Earth merchant ship. Avoid the blockade routes. Use alternate paths. Continue normal operations. The fold drives allowed human ships to bypass the blockade entirely, appearing in systems the Council wasn't monitoring. Trade continued without interruption, but Taeyong knew the blockade served another purpose. He sent an invitation to journalists from neutral worlds, historians, and independent observers. Come watch, he said. See what the Council is doing. They came in droves. The images they captured were damning. The massive Council fleet, bristling with weapons, surrounding human space like predators, circling prey. The contrast between the threatening warships and peaceful human merchant vessels was stark. When one human medical ship tried to leave Earth to deliver supplies to an independent colony, Council ships blocked its path. The medical ship carried vaccines for children. The Council fleet stopped it anyway. The footage played on news networks across the galaxy. Public outrage grew. This wasn't security. This was bullying. The Council's approval ratings plummeted. On Station Helios Prime, Counselor Thaxel raged at the negative coverage. Why are they painting us as villains? We are maintaining order. By threatening a medical ship? Bright Path challenged. By starving colonies? This is not order. This is oppression. Council chamber was no longer united. Arguments broke out during sessions. Species that had supported the blockade were reconsidering. The economic cost was too high, the political damage too severe, and still, humanity had not backed down. In her office on Earth, President Jiwoo Park reviewed the latest reports. The blockade was failing. Council unity was cracking. More species were leaving every week. The Galactic Council, once seen as an eternal institution, was collapsing. How long do you think they can maintain this? She asked Admiral Tae-young Choi during their daily briefing. Not much longer, he said. Their fleet is running low on supplies. They can't maintain a blockade of this scale indefinitely. Something will break soon, and when it does, we need to be ready with an alternative. The Council will fall, but the galaxy still needs a system for cooperation. We should be building that system now. Gi Woo nodded slowly. A new council? One that actually treats all species fairly? Exactly. We call it something different, structure it better, but yes. The galaxy needs order. Just not the Council's kind of order. The panic was spreading, and Earth was preparing to offer a solution. The medical transport was called Healing Hand, and it carried 17 doctors and nurses, along with 3 tons of medical supplies. They were heading to New Harmony, an independent colony on the edge of known space. The colony was dealing with an outbreak of bone fever, and Earth had volunteered to help. It was supposed to be a routine humanitarian mission. Lieutenant Min Ji-yoon was the transport's security officer. She was young, only 26, and this was her first deep space assignment. She sat in the small security station, monitoring the ship's sensors as they approached the blockade zone. The Council fleet was supposed to let humanitarian vessels pass. That was the rule even in wartime, and this wasn't even a war. We're being hailed, the pilot announced. It's a Torvin patrol ship. Open the channel, Captain Yuna said. She was the senior medical officer, a veteran of 20 years in Earth's medical corps. This is the Earth's medical transport Healing Hand. We are on a humanitarian mission to New Harmony Colony. We request passage through the blockade zone. The Torvin commander's face appeared on the screen. His massive features were twisted in what might have been a smile. Request denied. All Earth vessels are prohibited from movement. Return to your home system. We're carrying medical supplies for sick colonists. Children are dying. Not my concern. Turn back, or we will open fire. Captain Yuna looked at Minji. The young security officer checked her scanners. 2 more Torvin ships were moving into position, forming a triangle around the transport. They're targeting us, Minji reported quietly. Weapons hot. This is insane, Yuna said. We're a medical ship. We're unarmed. Final warning, the Torvin commander said. Turn back now. What happened next would be debated for years. Some claimed the Torvin commander made an error. Others believed it was deliberate. The actual truth might never be known, but the result was undeniable. The Torvin ships opened fire. The first blast hit the transport's engine section, causing massive damage. The ship lurched violently, throwing crew members against walls and equipment. Minji watched her console explode in sparks as systems failed throughout the vessel. The second blast hit the medical bay, venting atmosphere into space. The third blast struck the crew quarters. Minji found herself floating in zero gravity as life support failed. Around her, emergency lights flickered. She could hear screaming. She tried to reach the emergency suits, but the locker was jammed. Through the viewport, she saw the Torvin ship's holding position, weapons still glowing. Mayday. Someone was shouting into the radio. This is Healing Hand. We are a medical transport. We have been fired upon. We are venting atmosphere. Multiple casualties? Please respond. Admiral Tae-young Choi was in his ready room when the distress call came through. He listened to the panicked transmission in growing horror. A medical ship. They had attacked a medical ship. He immediately ordered his fleet to move toward the location. But he knew they would arrive too late. A Durrani merchant vessel named Swift Prophet was closer. Captain Pix, the same merchant who had been trading with Earth, heard the distress call and didn't hesitate. He diverted his ship to the coordinates and arrived to find the healing hand drifting, massive holes torn in its hull. The Torvin ships were gone, fled as soon as they realized what they had done. Pix's crew worked frantically to rescue survivors. They found 7 people alive in the aft section, protected by emergency bulkheads. Min Ji-yoon was among them, barely conscious, her suit leaking air. They pulled her through the airlock seconds before her oxygen ran out. 17 doctors and nurses had been on that ship. 10 were dead, killed instantly when the medical bay was destroyed. 7 survived, but all carried injuries. The medical supplies were destroyed. The mission to New Harmony never happened. Captain Pix made sure every moment of the rescue was recorded. The images of the shattered medical ship, the bodies floating in space, the terrified survivors being pulled from the wreckage, all of it was captured. He transmitted everything to news networks across the galaxy before the Council could stop him. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Peaceful protests erupted on dozens of Council worlds. On Dratha Prime, 1 million citizens marched through the capital demanding withdrawal from the Council. On Gorlan territory, the military refused orders to support the blockade. Even on Velkrin worlds, there were demonstrations calling for accountability. War Marshal Drexfer tried to claim it was an accident, that the transport had refused to stop, that his ships had acted in self-defense. But the logs from Healing Hand told a different story. Captain Yuna had complied with every order. She had been retreating when the Torvin ships opened fire. There was no justification, no excuse. It was simply murder. The Torvin government, facing mounting pressure, arrested the commander who had given the order to fire. They claimed he had acted without authorization. But the damage was done. The Council had crossed a line that could not be uncrawled. Wanted revenge? Choi wanted revenge. Every instinct in his military training screamed for retaliation. His fleet was ready. One word from him, and they would tear into the Council blockade and make them pay for what they had done. But President Jiwoo Park had different orders, she said firmly, during their emergency communication. We do not fire back. It killed our people, medical personnel. This is an act of war. And if we respond with violence, we become like them. The galaxy is watching, Admiral. Everyone saw what the Council did. If we retaliate, we give them the excuse they need to call us the aggressors. So we do nothing. We do something much more powerful than violence. We show restraint. We show that humanity is better than this. Tae-young wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He issued orders to his fleet. They would move to defensive positions around the blockade zone, but they would not fire unless fired upon. They would hold their ground, and they would wait. The standoff began in earnest. 200 Council ships faced 73 human vessels across a region of space that suddenly felt far too small. The entire galaxy held its breath, waiting for the war that seemed inevitable. Days passed, then weeks. The Council fleet maintained their positions, but they didn't attack. The human fleet held their formation, weapons ready, but not firing. The tension was unbearable. Journalists and observers crowded the neutral zones, recording every moment. Commander Jae-hoon Kwan was part of the human fleet. Commanding a destroyer called Righteous Fury, he watched the Council ships through his tactical display, counting them, analyzing their movements. They're afraid, he told his executive officer. Look at their formation. They're not preparing to attack. They're preparing to defend. Against what? We're outnumbered 3-1. They know something we know. That numbers don't tell the whole story. He was right. The Council ships were newer, larger, with more powerful weapons. But the human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and their crews were angry. More importantly, the full drive technology gave them options the Council couldn't counter. If the battle started, the humans would lose eventually. But they would make the Council pay dearly for their victory. War Marshal Drexfer understood this too. He ran simulation after simulation, and each one showed the same result. He could destroy the human fleet, but he would lose at least half his ships doing it. And for what? To prove a point? To maintain a blockade that wasn't even working? His political masters were screaming at him to do something, but he knew the truth. This blockade was already lost. The question was how to end it without admitting defeat. The answer came from an unexpected source. On Station Helios Prime, Bright Path called for a vote of no confidence in the council leadership. The motion was supported by 47 species, including some who had never challenged the establishment before. The vote passed. Councillor Thaxel and the other hardliners were removed from power. The new council leadership immediately called for negotiations with Earth. They proposed a ceasefire, a withdrawal of the blockade, and talks about resuming relations. President Jiwoo Park received the proposal and discussed it with her advisors. "They want us to come back," Admiral Tae Young Choi said. "They're just too proud to say it." "Then they'll be disappointed," Jiwoo replied. "We're not going back." "But we can talk. We can build something new," she sent her response. Earth would negotiate, but not about rejoining the council. Instead, they would discuss creating a new organization, one built on different principles. One where all species were truly equal. The blockade ended quietly. One day the council ships were there, the next they were gone. Drexfer withdrew his fleet and resigned his commission in disgrace. The 3-month standoff was over without a shot being fired after the healing hand. Massacre Min Ji-yoon recovered from her injuries in a hospital on Earth. She would carry the scars for the rest of her life, both physical and mental. But she would also carry something else. She had survived because strangers had risked their lives to save her. A Durrani merchant who owed Earth nothing had diverted his ship and rescued her. That meant something. That meant the galaxy was better than the worst actions of its governments. The confrontation was over, but the real work was just beginning. The conference center on neutral station Haven's Rest was built to hold 500 delegates. On the day of the first assembly, over 800 representatives showed up. They came from species that had left the Galactic Council, from independent worlds that had never joined, and from council members who were considering their options. They came because Earth had promised something different. Ambassador Dae-hae-in Kim stood at the podium, looking out at the crowded chamber. A year ago, he had walked out of the council chamber in disgust. Now he was here to build something better. He began to speak. "Welcome to the first assembly of the Free Worlds Alliance. This organization is not a replacement for the council. It is an alternative. We offer true cooperation between equals, not dominance of the powerful over the weak." The chamber was silent, listening. Dae-hae-in continued. "The rules are simple. All members have equal voice, regardless of size or power. Technology sharing is voluntary and reciprocal. Trade is conducted on fair terms. Military alliances are optional. And most importantly, any member can leave at any time without penalty. We are not building a prison. We are building a partnership." A Dratha delegate raised a claw.
"What about Earth?"
"You founded this alliance. Do you not hold special privileges?" "None," Dae-hae-in said firmly. "Earth has one vote, the same as every other member. We propose, you decide. If the alliance votes against Earth's interests, we will accept that decision. Why would you create a system where you have no advantage? Because we learned from the Council's mistakes. Power corrupts. Hierarchy breeds resentment. If this alliance is to succeed, it must be truly fair from the beginning." The vote to formalize the Free Worlds Alliance passed with 92% approval. The first members were Earth, the Luminae, the Durrani, the Rithani, and 43 independent worlds. Within 3 months, that number doubled. Within 6 months, it doubled again. Species were leaving the Galactic Council in waves to join the new organization, Dr. Hannah. Lee presented the Alliance's technology-sharing protocol. Every member contributes what they can and receives what they need. There are no patents, no exclusive licenses, no hidden fees. If you develop something new, you can choose to share it or keep it private. But if you share it with everyone equally. A Pixian scientist expressed concern. What prevents larger species from taking advantage? What stops them from taking technology and contributing nothing? Social pressure, Hannah said with a slight smile. Every member's contributions are publicly tracked. If a species only takes and never gives, others will notice. They won't be banned, but they will face the natural consequences of being selfish. Most species, we believe, will choose to participate fairly. She was right. The technology exchange flourished beyond anyone's expectations. Species shared innovations freely, and progress accelerated. Discoveries that would have taken decades under the Council system happened in months. The Luminae shared their energy manipulation techniques. The Rithani contributed their biological computing methods. Earth provided full drive technology to any species that wanted it. The whole galaxy benefited. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, was dying. Membership had dropped from 317 species to less than 90. The remaining members were mostly the major powers, like the Velkrin and Torvin, along with their closest allies. They tried to maintain the old system, but it was collapsing under its own weight. The Jumpgate network fell into disrepair. Trade routes broke down. The bureaucracy, designed for hundreds of members, couldn't function with less than 100. Councillor Thaxel, stripped of his position but still influential among the Velkrin, raged against the new alliance. He called it human imperialism, claimed Earth was manipulating smaller species, insisted the Council was the only legitimate authority. His speeches were broadcast across Velkrin space, where they found a sympathetic audience among those who missed the old order. "The humans have destroyed everything we built," he declared. "They have poisoned the galaxy with their primitive ideas of equality. We must resist. We must show them that the Council will endure." But the facts told a different story. The Free Worlds Alliance was thriving. Member worlds saw economic growth, technological advancement, and genuine cooperation. The Council offered only stagnation and decline. Even among the Velkrin, younger generations were questioning their leadership's position. President Ji Woo Park was approached by a delegation from the remaining Council members. They wanted to negotiate. Not Earth's return to the Council, but the Council's integration into the Alliance. It was a stunning reversal. "What are your terms?" Gi Woo asked the delegates. "The Council wishes to join the Free Worlds Alliance as a collective member bloc," the Gorlon representative explained. "We would maintain our internal structure, but operate under Alliance rules externally. That defeats the entire purpose. The Alliance is about individual species making individual choices. If Council members want to join, they must do so individually, as equals with everyone else. That would mean dissolving the Council entirely. Yes, it would." The negotiations took weeks. The remaining Council members were divided. Some wanted to preserve the old institution at all costs. Others saw the writing on the wall and wanted to join the Alliance before they were completely isolated. The debate was fierce and often bitter. Finally, a vote was held. By a margin of 53 to 37, the Galactic Council voted to dissolve itself. After 4,000 years of existence, the Council would cease to exist. Member species would be free to join the Free Worlds Alliance or remain independent as they chose. Bright Path, the ancient Luminae, who had been one of the first to challenge the Council's corruption, spoke at the dissolution ceremony. "We built something that was meant to bring species together. Instead, it pushed them apart. We created an institution that was supposed to promote peace, but too often enabled oppression. Today, we end that chapter and begin a new one. May our successors learn from our failures?" The trial of those responsible for the Healing Hand massacre took place on Haven's Rest, broadcast 2 billions across the galaxy. The Torvin commander who had given the order to fire stood in the defendant's box, along with 3 Council officials who had authorized aggressive action. She described the moment the weapons struck, the terror of watching her colleagues die, the desperate struggle to survive. Her voice never wavered, though tears ran down her face. "They were doctors," she said quietly. "They just wanted to help sick children, and they were murdered for it." The tribunal, composed of judges from 7 different species, deliberated for 3 days. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The sentences ranged from life imprisonment to permanent exile, depending on each individual's level of responsibility. War Marshal Drexfer, who had organized the blockade that led to the attack, received 20 years. The trial established important precedents. Military officers could not hide behind orders to justify war crimes. Government officials were responsible for the consequences of their policies. Humanitarian workers had protections that must be respected even during conflicts. These principles became part of the Free Worlds Alliance Charter. 5 years after Earth's withdrawal from the Council, Ambassador Daehyun Kim stood in the Alliance Assembly. Now meeting in a permanent station built cooperatively by member species, the chamber was twice the size of the old Council chamber, yet somehow felt more welcoming. There were no hierarchical seating arrangements, no positions of dominance. Everyone sat as equals. A young Zirathi delegate approached him after the session. "Ambassador Kim, I wanted to thank you. Your people saved my world when we were dying. You asked for nothing in return." "We did what anyone should do," Daehyun replied. "We helped because you needed help, so the Council would have demanded concessions. They would have used our desperation for leverage." "I know. That's why we left." The Zarathi paused, choosing words carefully. "Do you regret it? Leaving the Council? The conflict, the deaths, the economic disruption?" Daehyun thought about the question seriously. He thought about the scientists whose work had been stolen, the colonists who died because help never came, the merchants who were cheated and exploited, the medical staff who were murdered simply for trying to help. He thought about all the pain and injustice that humans had endured trying to work within a corrupt system. He said finally, "I don't regret it. Sometimes walking away from injustice is the only way to defeat it. We tried to reform the Council from within. It was impossible. They would never change because they benefited from the way things were. We showed everyone that leaving was possible, that there were alternatives. And the galaxy followed." "My government tells a story about your departure," the Zarathi said. "They say humanity didn't save the galaxy through strength or violence. They say you saved it by having the courage to say no more and walk away. Is that true?" Daehyun smiled. "We didn't set out to save the galaxy. We just wanted to be treated with dignity and respect. But yes, I suppose that's what happened. Someone had to be first. Someone had to show that the Council wasn't eternal, that their power only existed because we gave it to them. Once we took that power back, everything changed.